Welcome today. I appreciate being here. I hope I could be helpful. In today's class, we'll look at the evolution of retail architecture, the history of merchandising, and the valuable planning lessons that we can learn from downtowns. All these are important for architects as they can help in creating the 100% location. The evolution of the arcade, the history of the department store, the learning from downtown, and creating 100% locations. These are the bullet points. All right. First, evolution of the arcade. This is the 14th century drawing of the Isfahan Fabric Center in Isfahan, Persia. Looks like one of my centers. We didn't copy this, but I wish I had. It's quite beautiful and ventilated and light well, and you can see the merchants working hard here. And down the malls, as you can see, they sold fabrics, and the fabrics were, of course, used for household and for clothing and shoes. They made shoes out of the fabrics, and they would have a number of weavers there who would either present the fabrics that others had woven or weave themselves. And this was a shopping center. They came there to buy goods on a comparative basis with all the competition and with all the opportunities of seeing a number of different kinds of fabrics, all within the same area, to create a shopping experience. That's what this was. It also, as you can see, people met there and smoked there, as they did with these large pipes, and spent some of their day there. Providence, Rhode Island, and he built them over the station. The traffic came through the station. In those days, the vast amount of traffic from place to place and from even suburban areas happened through railroad. The roads weren't such that they connected cities. The connection to areas was by railroad, and they got this traffic, and there were offices above and retail on 2 levels, as you can see. So it has the same reaction of our centers today, and this happened in the 19th century. So it's not a new thing. Retail delivery, as we deliver it, is an old idea. We've been able to take it and evolve it and make it, we think, better and work better for us. But this is started out, and then you can see in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, we have the GUM. I don't know if you've ever been to Russia, but if you go to Russia, you'll see the GUM in Russia, which is in Moscow, which is a very large retail development that's on 2 levels and functions today. Burlington Arcade, I'm sure if you've ever been to London, I'm sure you visited it. It connects 2 major streets, and you walk through these from one street to the other using the arcade. And it does a lot of business even today. It specializes primarily in software and jewelry, and is a very, very viable development. Still functions as it did initially. These are the predecessors to what we've done and what we do. And these are enclosed spaces, you'll notice. These are not open malls as they talk about. These are enclosed spaces, warm in the winter, cool in the summer, primarily through ventilation. It wasn't on the basis of air conditioning as we know it. But if you were in Moscow or in St. Petersburg, you wanted to be warm. You didn't worry about cold. So anyway, and then of course the reason this was done this way initially was through the control of the space in terms of its operation, of its tenancy, so that there would be a good mix of tenants. That was the reason it was done this way. And they understood it, even then, that there had to be a balance of goods. And that was the way they were displayed, and that's the way they functioned. And the next item, beginnings of mass production. Initially, up until the end of the 19th century, at what is known as the Industrial Revolution, everything was made by hand, and there was not a sizing system as we have. There wasn't small, medium, and large. There was somewhat large and somewhat small. People knitted things primarily at home, and there was not a sizing system. So consequently, without a sizing system, there wasn't a pricing system. There were no firm prices on goods. You went in, you negotiated, you tried it on, and if it fit or near fit, they had lots of people that sewed there and lots of tailors, and they would take stuff in and they would move stuff around to try to make it fit. But basically, it was a barter type of business, that you bought things that were made, or you took yarn home and somebody in your home made the goods, and that was the way retailing occurred. It wasn't really It wasn't really until later that things became on the scale of sizing and price, and that was started in the middle of the 19th century, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. Meanwhile, this is interesting because this is the Galleria in Milan. It's the Pietro Emanuele II in Milan in 1877. Manguli was the architect, and you can see this is the mall as it exists today. This is the cathedral, famous Milan Cathedral, and here is the Opera House up here. So people walked down. This was the main drag, and they walked down here, and to get to the cathedral, they walked through the mall. So the mall was what we call an anchor, and people were religious, and they went twice a day to the cathedral, and this is an interior shot. You can see exterior shot, and these piazzas served as anchors, and this cathedral was what we call a people mover. It made people move from one area to the next, and that's why this mall was quite successful. And this was 1877. We didn't invent the mall. Next. This is interesting. This is John Wanamaker, Filene, and Marshall Field were really the three major forces that created shopping centers in the United States. Up till that time, Bon Marché built a major center in Paris, and that was in 1838. Bon Marché, but it wasn't as sophisticated as these fellows. They made it. They started as software stores, so they started as women's fashion wear, and they would add another department, or they started, or in Europe, many of them started as as real estate owned by the kings and queens and their ancestors and so forth, and they would have stores, separate stores, shops, and when the shops got in trouble, they would take them over. And finally, they'd taken over maybe half, and they actually decided to take them over. And that was really the way department stores started. That was the beginning. They put shops together, and they put uses together, and they found as they increased the number of shops and the number of uses and the number of merchants, they increased volume in the whole. And they increased this, and that's why they built these large department stores. That's interesting. ZCMI, which is called it's Zion's Cooperative Mercantile Institution, is what that stands for. That was begun in 1869. The Mormons who went to Salt Lake City made the decision that they had to really get into the retail business themselves, because they were getting ripped off by the railroads and by peddlers that came through, and they were charging too much and wrong sizes and all these kind of problems they were having. So they decided, they're a very strong organization, they decided we're going to do it ourselves. And that organization lasted until Macy's bought it, I think like 25 years ago. Macy's bought it, in 1973, that's pretty close. They bought it, and it's today a Macy's. Interestingly enough, the Taubman Company have torn all this big center down, and we have, because it really didn't work. It was on two sides of streets, and it was the parking was in a garage, and it was a mess. So we're under construction. We're opening this in 2012. We're opening a new center here next to the Tabernacle with Mormon Church as our partners. And it's going to have Macy's and Nordstrom's as the anchors, and it should be, and Dillard's, and it should be a very successful center. Hope to see you there. All right. Anyway, you can see the Bommache, as I mentioned, 1852, and the Cast Iron Palace was the Stewart department store many years ago. It was a Stewart family. They opened that in New York in 1862. And many of these stores went on and on and on. They were acquired, they kept their name, and the big change occurred. The next slide, please. This is Macy's in 1903, the final Macy, the fellow Macy, who built the first store on 14th Street, was acquired by the Strauss family, and they moved the store to where it is today at 40th and 34th and 6th, or Broadway actually at that point, isn't it? It's Broadway, or I can't remember, but it was there. You can find it, and it's very much the way it looks here. This has always been another store that never would sell to them. It was the only thing, the niche in the block they couldn't buy. And years ago, I was on the board of this company, and today they were acquired by Federated Department Stores, and of course they are now Macy's throughout the country. They've changed the name to Macy's so they could advertise nationally and so forth and function as one company. This Wanamaker's in Philadelphia is very famous. Has a famous organ here, the second largest organ in the world at Bragg. That would play every day at noon. And this, of course, the J.L. Hudson Company, 13 stories, and proud to be the second largest. I think Macy's always argued they were the largest, and Hudson's were the second largest department store in the world, 1,100,000 square feet. 13 levels, as I recall, and we all know the history of that. It's all local. And but what happened with Philadelphia, the Wanamaker's, and the J.L. Hudson's and Macy's, and of course Filene's and Marshall Field, is when they in the late 18th century, when they moved into these big stores, they had fixed prices, and they were able to deliver sizes. Very important, because you can't have fixed prices without sizes. Everything is different. And until they could fix the price, before they could fix the size problem, they couldn't fix the price. And it was all negotiated. And then there was this arrival of the middle class, which was very important in terms of who they could sell to. And of course, the reason for shopping is, everybody enjoys shopping. 86% of our customers are women. They buy more menswear than men do. So it won't surprise you, I'm sure, because it's still basically a woman's business, and we cater primarily to women. We love men to come, but we cater to women. And next, all right. The other thing is in 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act came in. And after that, in 1931, we had the Fair Trade Act. Now, the Fair Trade Act was sort of a weak act originally, and nobody seemed to care about it. And basically, it was an anti-brand act. Brands were what made the department store strong, because if you wanted to buy an Arrow shirt, you could only buy it in an AMC store. An AMC was an association of buyers, of buying, which had offices in Milan and Paris and New York, of course. And they would buy for stores. The strongest stores on the market basically belonged to AMC. Abraham Strauss in New York, as an example, Dayton's in Dayton, Ohio, in Minneapolis, and Hudson's in Detroit, and Woodward and Lothrop in Washington. These were very strong stores, and they were strong primarily because they owned the market, because they owned the brands. And we owned the brands. People knew the brands. They were advertised and they were promoted. And when they had the brands, people would come in and say, I want a Hathaway shirt. Well, you couldn't buy a Hathaway shirt unless it was in an AMC store. Now, the government came in 1931 and said, no way, that's controlling the market, which they did. And they not only controlled the market, they controlled real estate, because they were such a strong firm, like Hudson's in Detroit were such a strong, I couldn't build in downtown Detroit, basically. I mean, I gave that up. I went to California, I built all over the country, but I couldn't build here initially, because they controlled the market. When they wanted to build a center, they built it at Northland and Eastland and Westland, but they built it on their own. We weren't involved. We couldn't be involved. But fair trade changed it, because fair trade said that everybody can have these brands. They should not be tied up by one store. Everybody should be able to buy. And that opened up the business not only for the merchants, but for me, because we had an opportunity to start new stores with merchants, and we built many new brands. I mean, I go down a whole list for you, but many of them, Victoria's Secret is one we took to Wexner at the Limited, and we had the idea of it initially, and we sold it to him, and he made that's probably the most successful store that's ever occurred. Makes a couple $100,000, $1 million a year, and it controls its market by virtue of its price and its quality. That's why it controls its market, not on the basis of a name. Women go there because they get the kind of service and the kind of attention and the kind of product at the right price. That's why they go there. And he's made an incredible success out of this. Now, we brought him some that weren't so successful, Lane Bryant, but that was an old firm, half-size firm, which means large. And anyway, he, and with other merchants, Don Fisher, we built the second Gap store for the Gap in the country. And we built Gap stores before anybody built them. He brought that idea to us. Well, we actually saw it first because he had an A&P store in downtown San Francisco that went out of business. It was 9,000 square feet. He put a tape store in there, music tape store in there, and it was functioning. He was a friend of Peter Haas, who was the president of Levi Strauss. And Peter Haas said, "Why don't you put some jeans in there? I bet you sell jeans." It was a great location, and he put jeans in there, and jeans became the store. And when he opened the store with me in one of my centers, it was a jeans store. That's how he started the Gap. So early on, we were very involved in the creation of shops. John Nordstrom, I met with up in Seattle, and they were a shoe store at the time, a very good shoe store. And shoes are a very, very tough thing to merchandise because the turnover on the design and so forth is very, very quick, and the turn is quick, and you have to be very quick. And they were very smart merchants, shoe merchants. They have a store. I can't remember the corner, but it was on the same corner as where the big Nordstrom store is today. And they had 11 levels of shoes. You could buy shoes of every size, color, and design and price that you ever would want in that store. And they've built their store. They're probably one of the most successful department stores in America today. They have a wonderful middle market, and they're very profitable. The family's still very involved. And anyway, that's that. Anyway, coming back, this is the Sherman Antitrust and the Fair Trade Act. That took that away, as I mentioned. And what was important about the department store is it housed all the departments under one roof. And we learned from that. We built all these stores with these merchants because we knew that the mix of goods was the most important thing that we could do. That we had to have a great number of stores that sold competitive merchandise. We needed women's wear stores. We needed men's wear stores. We needed stores, excuse me a second. We needed stores that, that could compete with each other and give people comparative shopping. And next, this is, all right, here's a question. What are the valuable lessons that we can learn from urban retail areas?
People shop where they live.
What?
People shop where they live.
Well, sort of. As long as they got an automobile, they shop where the stores are. That's where they go. They go where the best complement of the kind of stores they may want to shop at are. Could be 20 miles, 15 miles, 12 miles, but they'll drive there. Yes, sir.
Pedestrian traffic?
Huh?
Pedestrians? Pedestrian traffic?
Well, I'd say control the pedestrian traffic. How about that? Will you buy that? I'll say that. All right, what else? Yes, ma'am.
The constant concentration of the stores, so the short walking distance?
Concentration of the store, so there's a short walking distance.
Yes, I think that's a good one. Concentration store, I think that's a good one. Well, let's just see what the answer is. Understanding the planning principles of a successful urban retail. That's the key. Understanding the principles. Now, here was an example. Here was a friend of mine. Wait till you get the... All right? What? Jim Rouse. Jim Rouse, and he was, yes, demographics are very important, but that we're coming to. Jim Rouse was a famous developer, very competent, had wonderful thoughts. He did, as an example, Columbia, this town of Columbia, north or south west of Baltimore, between Baltimore and Washington. He did the downtown urban development on the water in Baltimore. He did that famous development in Boston on the water. Famous development. That's it right there. You can see it there. This is it. And it was wonderful. We had one basic problem with each other we would argue about. What Jim wanted to do when he leased the center, when he merchandised the center, Jim would merchandise it like I used to accuse him of, like slicing salami. He'd put one store next to the next store, next to the next store, and he placed the stores based on who would pay the most rent. Now that was an argument I had with him, because our success is based on the fact that we looked at the department store as to how the department store placed their goods. And if you go in the department store, you'll see jewelry, you'll see costume jewelry, you'll see cosmetics, you'll see those kind of items which have a very high markup, but are because 100% of the people walk in the first floor. Maybe 65% to 70% go to the second floor. Maybe 45 to 50% go to the third floor. If they have a fourth floor, that's where the furniture and maybe food will be up there. And maybe only 35% go to the fourth floor. So, if you take those if you look at where the goods are, you can merchandise the center like they merchandise it. You place the food in the entry malls. I mean, you don't want them on the first level, even though they'll pay the highest rent, perhaps. That's not, but they become 2/3 of the day they're closed practically because nobody's in there. So if you're next to a food operation, you're not taking advantage of the traffic. So you put a hole in your center. So that's why we move the food to the entrance malls, not in every instance. You know, we make all these rules so we can break them, basically. But just like all laws are made that you can break them. But seriously, we were able to take Jim Rouse's sense where he said we merchandise like downtowns. But I said, Jim, downtowns fail. Why do you want to merchandise things the way downtowns are if they fail? Well, that was his notion. He wanted the shops to look like a downtown, which was interesting, but they didn't work in terms of causing the traffic to move, and that's what we're into. In theory, it's our responsibility as developers and as planners that we will give everyone 100% location. We talked about what's 100% location. If the traffic moves through the entire center and people go through the entire center. Every shop is 100% location. It's as simple as that. So if we can get the traffic to move through the entire center, we performed 100% location in every store. Now, next. Now this is, we'll discuss the downtowns for just a minute. Why they worked and why they didn't work and how they worked. This is a typical urban grid where you have Main Street, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th streets. But we know from history, and Leonardo da Vinci even said this, that basically 3 city blocks, and a block is about 330 feet, is about what people want to walk. Now, we got people shopping, not just walking, which makes a big difference. It's like the difference between shooting them out of a gun and having them stay still. It's a big difference because people want to move through. And we also do architectural tricks in terms of the space, where we move the space in and out and try to create interest. And but next plan. Now this is just a retail a town that we just, it's a fictional town that we've made up just to try to create the understanding of how this functions. You have a department store. That's the ones that are advertising, and that has a complete mix of all the goods. So people want to go first to the department store. That's their theory. So now, what do we do? This town is set up. Here's the retail around the town that's clustered near the department store. And these are the parking decks that usually the city put in. So, next slide. Now, what happens is these parking decks act as where the cars end up. Because everybody's driving here. Some walk. Those are may come in the department store from the next street. May walk in that way, or maybe they walk in this way. But that's a very, very small minority who live within 3 to 5 blocks. People will walk 20 minutes, but that's about a maximum, because they know they got to walk back 20 minutes. So, anyway, if you look at this traffic pattern, people are coming in the parking deck, they're coming out of the entrance, walking across the street, down the street, to the department store. Well, what happens? This retail becomes 100% location because they're walking by the store to get to the department store. Now, maybe it's not 100% because because when they return, they're going back to their car and they miss all the shops over here. They miss the shops in front on the other side of the street. So it's not 100%, is it? But it might be 60%, right? Might be 65%. Anyway, these shops end up getting the most business because on the return, they'll probably return across the street so they can see other shops. So that gives, and there's another parking deck over here. Likewise, they get that kind of traffic there. So basically, that's why this is, if you look at this, this gives you some sense of the way you'd plan a development. If you had your druthers and you had a blank piece of land or a blank piece of paper, how would you plan it? You'd plan it so the traffic could come in from every direction, the most convenient direction. And that's the way we plan. Next. Next. Oh. What are the 3 key rules of real estate development? Question.
Location, location, location.
Oh, is that right? Well, that's interesting. No, that's interesting. That's what it says there. But that's not the answer. Next. Next slide. Location doesn't make the development makes the location. This location thing that you've heard for years is nonsense. Don't believe it.